All right, welcome back for another deep dive. And today we're getting into some spooky stuff, I think.
Oh, spooky.
Yeah, those stories that make you kind of look over your shoulder.
Yeah.
So we're looking at a few different pieces about this South African schoolgirl, Clara Germana Cele, from the early 1900s.
Okay.
Now, some people believe she was possessed by a demon.
Wow.
And you can tell from the titles like Bloody Disgusting that these sources are definitely leaning into the dramatic.
Oh, yeah, they're going for it, huh?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Clickbait.
For sure. But as always, we're here to dig a little deeper. So what can we actually learn from these accounts? And how do we separate fact from fiction with something this crazy?
Well, you know what's really fascinating to me is that Clara's story, true or not, it makes us think about how we interpret these events from the past, especially when it's something like demonic possession.
Yeah.
It's not just a spooky story, It's a window into a very specific time and place.
Okay, so let's set the scene right. Early 20th century South Africa.
Okay.
A time when traditional beliefs and these modern influences were kind of clashing head on.
A lot of change happening.
A lot of change, exactly.
Yeah.
And Clara, an orphan at the time, was living and going to school at this place called the St. Michael's Mission.
Okay.
Or at least that's what one source says.
Already some potential conflict.
Oh, yeah. We're already seeing little inconsistencies.
Yeah.
And that context of cultural change is so important, right?
Absolutely.
Because it's in this landscape where those lines between spiritual and secular are super blurry.
Yeah.
That Clara's story really starts to unfold.
Right.
And it's a wild one.
Oh, I bet.
Some of these sources describe some really bizarre behavior. Speaking in languages she'd never even been exposed to.
No way.
Revealing people's secrets.
What?
Showing incredible strength and even levitating.
Whoa, hold on.
I know. Can you imagine witnessing this?
Especially back then.
Especially with the beliefs of the time. It must have been terrifying and confusing.
Totally. And one source even has this nun who saw it all, describing Clara's cries as, inhuman, unlike any animal she'd ever heard.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a crazy, vivid description.
Yeah.
And it really captures just how intense the situation must have felt.
The nun even said that the sounds were like a veritable herd of wild beasts orchestrated by Satan.
Oh my gosh.
I know, right? What an image. So faced with these events they couldn't explain, the people at the mission called in 2 priests to perform an exorcism.
I guess that's what they would do.
Yeah, it's like straight out of a movie, right?
Right.
And this is where the story gets even wilder. Imagine this. A 2-day battle between these priests.
Oh, wow.
And whatever they believed had taken hold of Clara.
A 2-day exorcism.
Yeah, 2 full days.
Intense.
The sources say that Clara fought back against them hard.
Really?
Like trying to choke one of the priests with his stole, throwing a Bible across the room.
Oh my gosh.
I know. And then after 2 grueling days, the exorcism was apparently successful. They claimed that Clara was free from this demon.
Huh.
And lived a peaceful life for 6 years before dying of heart failure.
So a classic good versus evil ending?
Right, like the demon was vanquished.
Right, happily ever after.
But we have our second source, the truth behind the exorcism of Clara Germana Cele. And it throws a wrench in everything.
Oh, really?
It does. It really does. The whole tone of this second source is so different. It's almost playful in its skepticism.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it points out all these little inconsistencies with locations and timelines.
Okay.
And it questions some of the details like, did Clara really make a pact with the devil? Or did she just say she did?
That's a big difference.
Huge difference. And that shift in tone is important, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because it encourages us as readers to think critically about what we're being told.
Absolutely.
And to really look for evidence.
Be skeptical.
Yes. And this second source brings up some big questions, especially when it points out that Clara's name doesn't even show up in any printed records until decades after.
Whoa.
I know. So now we have these 2 very different views.
2 sides of the same coin.
Totally. On one hand, this dramatic story of demonic possession.
Right.
And then this more skeptical take that questions if anything even happened.
It really makes you wonder what actually happened to this girl.
It really does. Like, what's the truth about Clara Germana Cele?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
And to try and answer it, we need to look deeper into the historical context, the psychology of belief, and how stories can change over time.
That sounds fascinating. And that's where you come in.
All right. That's it.
You're going to guide us through all this, help us untangle this web of information.
I'm happy to help. For centuries, demonic possession. It was how people explained anything that seemed, well, abnormal.
Right.
It was a way to understand things they couldn't explain, especially when it came to what we now call mental illness.
So what we might consider a psychological condition or maybe neurological
Exactly.
could have been seen as like straight up demonic influence back then.
Yeah. And of course, we have to be careful about drawing conclusions from 100 years ago.
Right.
We only have so much information, but it's still interesting to think about how many of Clara's symptoms,
Okay.
like speaking in tongues, acting erratically, claiming these supernatural abilities, all of that, maybe it could be viewed through a modern medical lens.
That's a really interesting point.
Right?
It makes you realize how much our understanding of the brain has changed.
Yeah.
What seemed supernatural to them might have a totally normal explanation now.
And that leads us to another important part of this whole thing, storytelling.
Okay.
Think about how we're even learning about Clara.
Yeah.
We have these conflicting accounts, most of them written years, even decades after it all happened.
Right. And we don't have anything firsthand.
Exactly.
It's like solving a puzzle with missing pieces.
Exactly. And that's where things get tricky. With these secondhand stories, especially supernatural ones, you have to be super careful about truth versus fiction. Details get exaggerated, timelines get messed up, and what might have started as something ordinary
Yeah.
turns into something extraordinary.
Like a game of telephone, the story changes every time.
Exactly. So it's so important to look at these accounts critically. The fact that Clara's name only shows up later, that's a big red flag.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if the whole Clara Germana Cele story, maybe it got embellished
It's possible.
to make it juicier or to support certain beliefs.
Yeah, so how do we even navigate this when the story's so captivating?
It really does pull you in.
Well, this is where critical thinking is crucial.
Okay.
It's not about saying everything's fake. It's about looking at the information closely.
Right.
Ask yourself, where's this coming from? Are there biases? Is there any actual evidence?
So approach it with skepticism, but keep an open mind.
That's it. And sometimes we just can't know for sure.
Yeah,
We have to be okay with that ambiguity and remember that history is messy.
that's a good point. We want a neat explanation,
We do?
but sometimes the real answer is we don't know.
Sometimes, yeah.
But even if we can't say for sure if Clara was possessed,
Right.
her story teaches us so much.
Absolutely.
It's a window into that time and place
Right.
when supernatural beliefs were just ingrained in society.
It shows the power of stories, too,
Yeah.
and how they change over time.
It's almost like Clara's story, true or not, it reflects our own fascination with the unknown.
You got it.
We love these supernatural tales, the ones that challenge how we see the world.
It's true.
Think about how popular ghost stories and horror movies are. We love them.
We do. We can't get enough of them.
Why is that?
Because they let us explore what we believe, grapple with the unknown, confront our fears, but in a safe way.
So even if Clara's story is more legend than fact,
Yeah.
it still has this power.
Absolutely.
It speaks to our fascination with the supernatural, with trying to understand the human mind and how stories evolve.
It's less about what really happened and more about what it says about us.
You said it perfect.
And there's one more thing about this that's worth thinking about.
Okay, tell me. What is it? Okay, you were saying there's one more thing about Clara's story we should think about.
Yeah, imagine being a young orphan girl, early 1900s South Africa, surrounded by these strong religious beliefs,
Okay.
and then you start experiencing things that are completely unexplainable.
Whoa, yeah.
Wouldn't the idea of demonic possession seem, I don't know, almost believable?
That's true. It's like if you didn't have the knowledge of modern psychology,
Exactly.
neurology, all that,
Right.
you'd search for answers in what you did know.
You'd use the framework you had.
Right. Your own worldview.
And for Clara, that was a world where demons were real.
So Clara's story, even if it's been exaggerated, it shows us that what seems crazy to us now
Yeah.
could have made total sense back then.
Different times, different ways of seeing things.
It really highlights how much our understanding of the world changes.
Constantly evolving.
What will people 100 years from now think of what we believe?
That's a great question.
What will seem outdated to them?
I don't know, but it's fun to think about.
Right. It's like we're always on this journey of discovery,
We are.
moving from one explanation to another.
Always learning.
And stories like Clara's, they remind us that the journey never really ends.
Never.
There's always more to learn,
Absolutely.
More to question, more to explore.
Even without all the answers.
Right, even with the ambiguity.
There's value in the exploration itself.
You're so right. And that's what I love about critical thinking.
Me too.
It's not about having all the answers.
No.
It's about thinking things through, looking at different viewpoints.
Considering all the possibilities.
And then being open to the fact that we could be wrong.
Always.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Clara Germana Cele, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from this?
I'd say embrace the mystery.
Okay.
The world is full of things we can't explain, and that's okay.
It's okay not to know everything.
Exactly. That not knowing, that's where curiosity and wonder come from.
And that leads to a deeper understanding of everything.
Of ourselves, the world, everything.
That's a great way to put it. I love that.
Thanks.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the story of Clara Germana Cele.
She's a fascinating case.
She is. And remember, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep your mind open to all the wonders and mysteries out there.
There's so much out there.
There is. Until next time.